Did you see there?
Yeah, that was great.
All right, nice. All right. So we're live. All right, Dominic. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So you're a planner in Rhode Island.
Yes, yep. So I work as a municipal planner in Rhode Island. There's only 39 cities and towns, so it's kind of like one large city state with 39 cities and towns who all have their own ways of doing things.
Yeah. I mean that's like a county in New Jersey, like 39 cities or towns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my favorite are the maps of I think it's like Texas or something. You can see like how many Rhode Islands you can fit into a state, and it's like over 100 Rhode Islands can fit into Texas. Yeah.
I don't. That's wild. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, and like in California, there are entire counties that are larger than
Oh yeah.
Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So how big is the place that you're where you're working?
So there are about 50,000 residents,
Okay,
and we're close to Providence. So yeah, about 50,000 people.
nice. And like department wise, how many planners are in that
There are about
department?
five of us. So we have a
Mhm.
director, a chief planner, a principal planner, um, and then two senior planners. And then we have someone
Got
who
it.
works more with small businesses who doesn't do as much of the land use planning. So it's more
Interesting.
of it's like our office is more of planning and economic development is how our office is structured.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Makes good sense. So do you guys have like a planner of the day rotation? Which is why I named this what it is.
Wow, no, I don't know how that works. I would say we all specialize in some things, and then we all do a little bit of everything. So I would say site plan review if someone's coming in for a typical subdivision. Say you're just doing a two-lot subdivision, or you're doing a major land development project. There's about three of us who would handle those, and then could be either one of us, and then as you get into more specific projects, someone really focuses more on historic projects and environmental projects, and then someone else is more transportation and economic development. But we all overlap. But if there's a certain grant or a certain project, that person would work on what they kind of specialize in.
Right. Um, yeah. So environmental. Is there like an industrial legacy there?
Yes, there was a lot of old like petroleum storage tanks at certain areas of the city, and those areas have been redeveloped, but a lot of our environmental planning, I don't know, I guess it's mostly done by the private sector who would redevelop those parcels. So our review, we would work with our state agency, Rhode Island DEM, Department of Environmental Management. So a lot of it would flow through DEM, and we're almost as project managers reviewing, whatever environmental reports are required of the private sector as they redevelop, and then also ensuring that permitting is obviously approved by the statewide permitting. But I think our in Rhode Island, at least, it's heavily done by the state DEM, and then locally with more municipal projects. Some of it's, I want to say, like lighter environmental work as far as um, like our urban forestry or just different grants from DEM, some different open space grants. So kind of like recreation and trails. Yeah. So
Yeah. Do you guys get many subdivision, like new subdivisions? Is that redevelopment?
yeah. For context, our minimum lot size is about 5,000 square feet. It's not about, it is
Yeah.
5,000 square feet. So you
Are
have
are
some
there
areas that were double,
are there
call
are
it a
there
double lot.
minimum are there
I'm
minimum
sorry.
dimensions on that? Sorry. Are there minimum dimensions on that 5,000?
Yeah, 50 feet of frontage, and
Hmm.
then 100-foot depth.
Got it. Oh,
So
yeah, that's a
yeah,
decent size. Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's an eighth of an acre, right? Just under.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have someone who maybe when these were platted in 40s or 50s, maybe someone had two or three of these, so they have
Mhm.
about a 15,000 square foot lot. And then depending on where they put their house, maybe they can just do a clean one more house. It's so built out that we don't have too many. Like we wouldn't have many a 10 lot subdivision. That would be there's not that much available land, undeveloped land. So
Yeah.
we mostly would see trying to squeeze out one more single family home in a 2 lot subdivision, and then maybe a subdivision just in the context of reworking parcels for a major land development project. Say someone's doing a large apartment building and they might need to rework some of the lines parcel. So yeah, that would include a subdivision, but we're not doing large cookie cutter single family
Yeah.
subdivisions right now.
Right. Right. But like, do you stay pretty busy with that kind of stuff, or because I
Oh
heard you
yeah,
mention economic development twice, so it,
yeah.
um, yeah, so there's a lot of lot splitting going on and like a fair amount of new housing.
I would say a lot of infill, right? So what we
Yeah.
would see is, say you have a large strip building that is on a main street, right? A bunch of different, like 1 story commercial building.
Mhm.
Nowadays, what's popular is that gets demoed, and you'll have 3 floors of apartments.
Right.
And so that's a lot of infill that we're seeing.
Mhm.
Is we're seeing a lot of residential development, not as much commercial, but so I think because rents have just continuously gone up, that it seems to do well with the pro forma for those types of projects. So
Yeah.
a lot of the site plan review, I would say, is formerly developed land getting redeveloped into housing,
Yeah.
and we're pretty
Yeah.
busy with that.
Yeah. Yeah. We're the same thing is happening here. I mean, we
Okay.
like on the fringes, we still have a lot of new
Okay.
development, but closer, I would say within like the inner 7-8 miles, there's a lot of redevelopment happening.
Okay. Yeah.
There will be a lot more soon once we get a new code, because right
Yeah.
now it's not impossible to do it. It's just really difficult, and it costs developers time and money. So the people
Are
who
you
don't
guys
specialize,
revamping your entire zoning ordinance?
yeah, yeah, we're moving
Nice.
to a form based code.
Okay.
So
Nice.
yeah, it should be cool. We'll see what happens, because it always comes down to the politics. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Are you guys
um,
doing that internally, or do you guys have a consultant probably that helps?
yeah, 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 yeah. It was consultant, so it's actually DPZ. Um,
Okay.
so and they've not just for us, but they, I mean, they do. That's what they do, and so they've done it all over the state because they started here in Miami. Um, so it's pretty common. But
That's
anyway,
exciting.
so planner of the day is actually the person who answers the phone. So it's
Oh, I
usually
get you.
like
Okay.
like a rotation. Um, so do you guys take turns doing that, or is it just like whoever calls in, uh, like
Yeah, when
whoever
people,
happens
I
to answer the
say,
phone? Or
yeah, we have a planning line, so that everybody's phone rings when that happens. Um, and then we all have our individual lines. So if it rings or someone comes in, to your point, it depends. If you get a project in, we'll review it with our director and see if there's. I mean, we're all close enough where you kind of know who might take it on. But if it's just a 2 lot that comes in the door that day, and I'm talking to the guy and going through, he's kind of explaining the concept. I'll say, hey, let's sit down and have a pre-app meeting. Let me get engineering and zoning in, and we can meet when you're free. And then I'll probably just keep it going and staying on that project because I know about it. So instead of passing it off on someone else. But if someone's building up a lot of work, and then they're like, hey, yeah, I've got a couple things going right now. Does anybody have capacity? And then maybe someone else will get it. But yeah, that's interesting. Is that how that works at like smaller cities or even larger cities? Is that common in the planning practice, I guess, to have a planner of the day?
yeah, so when I worked at the municipal level,
Hmm.
the phones were more quiet, but
Okay.
it's also a smaller department, so there are fewer people to share the load. But when I've worked at the county level, it's nonstop, like just phone calls
Wow.
and emails, and you 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 really do need someone who just that's their day is answering the phone, because it's
So
that.
I have to say we do have the luxury. We have an administrative assistant. So she would answer the phone if someone calls,
Yeah,
and if she's
yeah,
not at her desk, then like I said, we all get that call that rings on everybody's phone. So then
yeah.
someone would pick it up if she doesn't pick it up.
That's cool. That's a cool way for it to
So we're
work. But
cheating.
yeah, yeah.
But
Usually for us, it's like it's homeowners who, planning just winds up being the first stop for everything,
yeah,
even if their question is actually about building. And sometimes
yep.
people call about utilities, and you're like,
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know, but I could tell you who to
Oh, their
talk
trash
to.
didn't get picked up, or oh yeah,
Yep.
we get everything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So now, does your
Um,
zoning officer sit in your planning department, or are they? How does you work with zoning? Because I find that interesting in different cities and towns. Because
mhm,
our zoning officer is actually a planner. He works a lot, does a lot of private work, but
mhm.
he is like has his AICP, so he is so familiar with the planning world. And I found that other cities and towns, it's a building official who doesn't have a planning background who gives out zoning
Yeah,
certificates. So how does
yeah.
it work for you?
So usually, and I'm talking about big departments here because
Mhm.
Orange County, Florida is 1.5 million people,
Yeah,
and
that's the state of Rhode Island. That's more
it's
than the state of Rhode Island. Yeah.
right, right. So, but about 500,000 of those people live in the cities within the county, but a whole bunch of the county is unincorporated. So that's, that would be the job of the county. And same thing, I worked for the county south of here, um, Osceola, for a couple of years. Smaller, about 400,000, but most of the people who live in the county are going to be in the unincorporated area. So all of the planning, all the permitting goes through the county. Um, and the cities are annexing those subdivisions, but it's usually not until they're established. So
Okay.
the county does all the work for the planning and the permitting, and then the city just grabs the tax money when it's finished.
Yeah.
But the point is, they're huge departments. You're talking like 25 to 30 planners in the planning department,
At the county level,
and
right? Because
at the
that makes
county
sense.
level.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, and most of the day to day is going to be related to. This is a question for you as well, but here, planning is defined by state law, and there's a whole chapter of things that you're required to do as a county or
Mm-hmm.
a city. Um, and So one of those things is maintaining a future land use map. So we're
Mm-hmm.
basically we're getting the population projections every 5 to 7 years. We have to look at those projections and then recalibrate. And so we need to have enough land in the county or the city to meet those population projections. That's has a future land use of residential, or that would otherwise permit residential, and then have that
Mm-hmm.
density to meet those targets. So it's usually divided up into comprehensive planning, which is the comp plan and dealing with future land use, and then with current planning, which is people coming in for rezoning and permitting and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Zoning is a whole separate beast where they do some rezoning, but most of their time is with site plan review. That's like most of what they're doing, making sure that when the site plans come in, that they comply with the zoning code, the land
Okay.
development code. Um, yeah,
And do they sit
it's
at the local level or the county level, the zoning officer?
both. So
Okay.
like the zoning department where I'm working now, it's about 20 people. Um,
Wow.
and but yeah, a lot of what they're doing is site plan review, and they even
Okay.
have teams that specialize within zoning. Um, and But it's fairly professionalized. Most of those people have either come from a planning background or they're doing their masters in planning right now. Um,
Okay.
and they may have worked in permitting before, and they have that
Mm-hmm.
kind of familiarity that they've moved over to zoning because they're studying. But yeah, yeah, like I think the expectation, at least locally here, is that everyone who's working sort of in planning and development is either going to come from a planning background or an engineering background, because
Hmm.
building, who's actually doing the inspections and the actual permitting, they're their own department, and
Yep.
you don't typically find planners there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Yeah, this is interesting. So, I wrote my master's thesis on because I'm from Rhode Island, but I went to Tufts for my master's degree,
All
and
right.
Massachusetts has a little bit different model than Rhode Island, at least its regulatory framework. So, in my research, recommending Massachusetts adopt more of a Rhode Island planning framework
Mhm.
model. Um, Florida was similar in that in the Rhode Island model of exactly what you spelled out as far as our state um, requires that each city and towns, we have 39 municipalities, adopt a comprehensive plan. And then it enables the 39 cities and towns to adopt zoning ordinances, right? And those zoning ordinances have to be consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but we don't in Rhode Island because we're a smaller state. We don't. It's all at the municipal level. We don't have a county a county form of government like is basically non-existent.
Yeah.
I think like with the court system, that's about it. Other than that,
Mhm.
you could ask someone; they might not know what county they live in. It's just what city or town.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that's how it works. And in Massachusetts, that tying to the zoning to the comp plan isn't as strong as it is in Rhode Island. Um, and
Yeah.
now we do have a statewide plan, so all our comp plans have to be consistent with the state plan, and we're required to update our comp plans to do a 20-year comp plan every 10 years. Some
Yeah.
cities and towns lag behind. Not every city and town is up to
Yeah.
date or will be up to date. The penalties aren't really as severe. The state never really came down hard on that, but
Mhm.
these laws were kind of done revised in it was either 89, 1990, and 1991, or like 90, 91, 92, where they did the Comprehensive Planning and Land Use Act, then the Zoning Enabling Act, and then the Land Development and Subdivision regs. So
Yeah.
and they did that in such a nice way where it's first you should do your comp plan, and then you should have your zoning, and then you're reviewing your land development and subdivision regulations in conformance with your zoning ordinance, which should be in conformance with what you were just talking about, our comp plan, which includes our future land use map, as you just mentioned. So,
Yeah. Nice.
so in
Yeah.
Florida, it's so interesting because of how much new development you have. It's so different from the way I work, or not, just the environment I'm in. So that future land use map is so important to you guys as you are envisioning that or planning for new growth. Whereas I think so much of the planning I do is redevelopment, infill. It's replanning, right? Or so,
Yeah. And I mean,
so
that's important too, because that sort of that comp planning code really, um, you know, really defines whether or not a city fails or succeeds, in large part. Because I don't know. I don't know how much of a correlation there actually is, but when I look at it, I I see when I see a city that's struggling, it's one that just is not paying attention to that stuff, and
mhm.
has, like a 30 or 40-year-old comp plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But I don't know how, I don't know how chicken or the egg that is really.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so you've been doing a lot of your own content. So
Yeah,
I've definitely enjoyed the shorts that you do. That's
thanks.
sort of like evolution. So how'd you get into that?
Yeah, so I started the my City Glow Up Instagram page when I think I was when I was still in graduate school. So I graduated from Tufts. I forget if it was 2021 or 2022, but so I've been working as a planner for about 4 years. I interned for a year, and then I've been working full time for maybe a little over three then. And it was just a project in graduate school where I was just looking in Google Earth and particularly the Seaport district because I was doing something in Boston and just seeing how it was all parking lots. And then I was like, wait a second, I didn't know that that's what the Seaport was. So, and then also being around the Providence, Rhode Island area, looking at historical aerial imagery before Interstate 195. So you're familiar with 95, obviously, Jim, down in Florida, right? It runs from Maine down to you guys. So seeing the city before 95 and 195, the downtown Providence, I would just share images like that on my personal Instagram, and then a lot of people were just interested. I was just like, oh, that's so cool. You just didn't know. I didn't know either until you look at what Providence looked like in 1949, 1950, and same with Boston. So then I thought, I'll just share these. I'll just create a separate page. So that's kind of how I did it. It was just that's how I got interested in it. Just looking at a lot of it is, yeah, it's funny. I don't know if you all agree with me, but it seems like today's planning is just trying to make up for the mistakes the previous planners did. It's like that seems to be like the evolution of the planning industry. It's like we work now because of what the planners previously did, and so that's kind of what I'm showing the changes I find interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I kind of think about that like you know how like 150 200 years ago if you wanted to get your teeth pulled, you would go to a barber because there were
I
no
didn't know that.
dentists. Yeah. Amputations, whatever. Like you just went to the barber. If you needed to get your finger cut off. But uh no, I mean if you I think Harvard was the first university in the country that had a planning program. And
Wow,
I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it started in the 30s, maybe the 20s. Um,
makes
because
sense.
before that, there just wasn't. It was either an architect or an engineer.
Yep.
So like Daniel Burnham,
Yeah.
he was not a planner, and I mean he planned. Um, and
Yeah.
Robert Moses
Hmm.
came from an engineering background. Um, all these big names. So and like um, yeah, I mean I think it. I think before Jane Jacobs,
Hmm.
there just weren't planning programs at many colleges. I don't know how people got into this. I can kind of I can kind of I can kind of see it. Like people because there are remnants of it, especially with people who are just retiring now. Like they got into it because they were working in permitting and
Hmm.
someone needed to do the work. But before, because yeah, so comp planning here was instituted. The state passed all the laws around it in 1991, um,
Okay.
and
Yes.
and and as far as I know, they basically passed the law, and everybody had 6 months to comply.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. Yep.
so, um, and it wasn't done well, and
Okay.
there just weren't many people with a planning background, um, and you know, and not to say that like everything's perfect now, um, just
Yeah.
that it's better and that we're definitely making up for a lot of mistakes and a lot of lost time for sure. Um,
Yeah. If there was more data, and there is, if I spent more time on it, but it's not as easy to get the before and then because a lot of the glow ups I post about, and the reason why it's called a glow up is just because someone had commented one time saying like, oh, this is a cool glow up, so that's why I named it that. But I never intended each post to say like this is better than before, because I wish I could show, all right, this is what it looked like in the 1940s. And then you start seeing a lot of parking lots and highways kind of, you see the decline of the urban, of the built environment. And then now
mhm.
I'm posting the decline and then the current day. So it looks
Yeah,
like this is what they always looked like. And now it looks better, when the before the decline was actually one of the you know, yeah, those cities looked great. And when you're looking at 1930s, 1940s, almost any city, and then you start to see massive buildings just kind of demolished, just the whole urban renewal of many cities. So I'm kind of showing
absolutely.
post urban renewal. So, but it's because I can't get the aerial. imagery before the 1980s on Google Earth for every city, but obviously they exist if I tapped into a state resource or a city resource. They exist, but
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, seeing like seeing the rebirth of a lot of these places, it is what I find the most intriguing. And like,
mhm.
you know, I lived in Philly from like late '99 till 2012,
Okay.
and there's so much infill going on in that, especially in that first decade. And I know part of it I know is just sort of like a an urban revival that happened almost everywhere, but also the city had a 10-year pilot program, like a payment in lieu of taxes. So the first year you paid zero in taxes, property
Mhm.
taxes, and then
Okay.
the so year zero was zero, and then year one was 10%, and then it
Yep.
increased 10% every year until the 10th year when you were paying full freight, um, and that just you know development just took off, and all those center city parking lots got almost all of them. There's like one big one
Nice.
that's left
Yeah.
that people lovingly refer to as the Disney hole because it was a huge hole in the ground that got excavated because Disney was supposed to build some big like store and some experience
Wow.
there, but then they abandoned it. So there's just a hole in the ground,
That's wild. Yeah.
um, which is even more funny because I live here now. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Exactly.
um, but yeah, I mean, I guess my point there is that those things happen because of policy, one way or another, and like the opposite also happens because of policy, one way or another, or a lack of it,
Mhm.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah, and you kind of mentioned this earlier, but it seems like you guys have a heavy focus on that the economic development side and sort of making things happen. So is that like is there a big cross pollination with planning and economic development? And do you guys use like consultants for that?
Well, yeah, depend. So our office has always been structured as with economic development. So that's always been a focus. I would say we've had utilized consultants in the form of some like market studies of certain areas, but a lot of trying to identify what are our main commercial corridors, monitoring the vacancies there. If a business is interested in relocating to the city, having meetings with them and explaining kind of what you just mentioned of like, all right, what is the city's tax stabilization policies, what are the benefits to locating to the city, and just kind of being a resource so they know that, hey, if I choose to develop here, if I choose to relocate my business here, at least we know there's an office in City Hall that I can contact when it comes to trying to answer any questions they have with working or dealing with municipal government. So a lot of it also is applying for grants that might help the built environment on main streets, working with the state's commerce department to facilitate grants from the state to businesses. So we're really trying, really the point people for businesses, and which overlaps with land use. So it's very complementary. And my undergrad was in economics, so it was a natural fit for me to do from undergrad in economics, and then planning. I really like the land use aspect. I like the economics aspect. Um, yeah, just seeing what gets built where. I think it's just a good overlap with economic development and business and planning.
Yeah, yeah. So good segue there. How did you so undergrad in economics? How'd you
Hmm.
get into planning? Like, what was the
I
launch
would
pad there?
say I would go to a lot of city council meetings. So dating back to high school, so I graduated high school in 2012. So it was really during the post like
Yeah.
2008, 2009 financial crisis, right? And then
Mhm.
I'm in high school during the aftermath of that. And then, so, there were just lot of budget cutbacks. My experience in high school was understanding, like, was trying to understand economics. Like, why do these boom and busts happen? So I think that was a
Yeah.
significant influence. So naturally, the closest politics, closest form of government to me was City Hall. So I would go to the council meetings just to learn a little bit more. And so then from there, I was just attend the meetings, and I got appointed to our city's economic development commission, so which is staffed by the planning department. So even at this time, I wasn't interested in becoming a planner, but I graduated high school. I'm studying economics in college, and then I worked full time at a bank for 4 years after my undergraduate. So I think again, I would say through the Economic Development Commission and seeing the planning department, the staffer who would staff our meetings. We only meet once a month. It was a light lift, and I would just say, "Oh, he gets to see what's being built." Like, he always just knows what's happening in the city because he works in the planning department. This is so cool. Oh, what's being
Mm.
built there? I see construction there. What's that? I'd always ask him. So I think that's how I got interested, and I started to realize planning is the combination of my interests in government, finance, and economics. So it
Yeah.
wasn't until I was probably 24, 25, I even thought about planning. And then I realized, almost at the time, every entry level job in Rhode Island for a planner one, the entry level planning position required a master's degree in planning. So then I started looking into master's programs, and then
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of how it happened,
Mhm.
through City Hall, I guess,
Yeah.
through my interest in local government.
That's wild.
And
Yeah.
I actually
Because I
found,
mean,
oh, I'm sorry.
no, no, no. Go ahead.
In graduate school at Tufts, the degree program is urban and environmental planning at Tufts, and there's no more program in Rhode Island. University of Rhode Island used to have a master's in community development. That was their planning program, but it went away in the early 2000s, I think, late 90s. So most people at Tufts had an environmental background. A lot of my classmates, but my background was more in like the land use and zoning and municipal government. So I went into it knowing I wanted to
Mhm.
be a municipal planner, maybe work in consulting, but definitely be involved in the land use and development world. So that was definitely the path for me.
Yeah. That's interesting. A similar thing happened to me. So, um, back when I started college, the program was in Camden because I went to Rutgers for my undergrad.
Oh, awesome!
So the program was in Camden at the time. It was urban studies and community development.
They're known
That
for
was
their
the
program,
department,
right? Yeah, I mean,
right? Well, they are
yeah.
now. So before I graduated, they moved the program to New Brunswick because they opened the Blaustein School for planning and public policy.
Okay.
So there's like a whole separate campus there now in New Brunswick, but that's an hour from Camden. And so my last year, they wanted me to take classes in New Brunswick, and I'm like, there's no way I'm doing a 2 hour round trip for one class.
Yeah.
Like that's just crazy. Um, so and anyway, yeah, it's interesting just to like, especially over the last 20-25 years, to see like the reorganization of it all as it um, and I think that's because the people who would have gone through the first programs in the 60s, who are teaching, and who
Mhm.
are who have finished their career and have turned to teaching, um, they're all retired. So the people who are doing that now, this is like the second generation,
Mhm.
and it's a lot more. There a lot more technical aspects to it, whereas when I did my undergrad, it was mostly theory,
Okay.
and there was a lot of emphasis on community organization and architecture. But when I went to grad school, it was all like hands on and technical, and
Okay.
sort of code based, comp planning based. Like this is how you understand the plan.
And
This
where'd
is
you go to
how.
graduate school? At Rutgers too, or?
No, in Australia, I went to University of Queensland, which is in Brisbane.
Wow,
So yeah, it's
that's
pretty cool.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that it would be different, but it really isn't because I did my undergrad and then I worked in planning for I worked in transportation planning. Well, that's
Great.
I did work in municipal planning for about a year and a half, and then I went into transportation planning.
Yeah.
But then the recession hit. So like you, I'm like, oh well, what am I going to do? And then it dragged on to 2012, and I'm like, it's time to go back to school. But yeah, yeah, you think that it would be different, but it's so similar. Like the stuff
Wow. All
that's
right. Yeah. That's good.
because I had this conversation recently at work where and this is kind of going back to those planner of the day questions. People get confused because we've got so what planner of the day. I didn't really mention this before, but like a lot of the calls are homeowners just wondering. Sometimes not for our department, but sometimes it's like, can I split my lot? I want an addition.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or they own an empty lot and they want to know what they can do there, kind of thing. But a lot of times it's like real estate agents who are working due diligence for developers.
Sure.
And but the real estate side of things is all, it's not written down anywhere. There's no code. It's common law. It's legal decisions. That's what that law is. But then like
Mm-hmm.
what we're doing is codified. But the code still has to be based on the common law. And so like people want to know why they can't do things because it's not written down that they can't do it. It's like, well, yeah, because you've got both of these different legal aspects coming together. So Australia has that same foundation of common law, and
Mm-hmm.
the only real difference is that they don't like their comprehensive planning game is, it exists, but it's not strong at the local level because it exists at the state level. And there's actually a statewide uniform permitting process. So
Cool.
every place you go to pull permits, the process is exactly the same. And I don't, um, it's something that we should absolutely be doing here.
So Rhode Island's working on that now. We have a
Nice.
it's
Probably the
funny.
easiest place to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, yeah, like if you were to go, yeah, if you were to go and apply for a building permit in one city or town, it's gonna be the same website format, to your point, the same information, but then because there's 39 different zoning ordinances, that'll be a little bit tweaks, but it's gonna be the same. Yeah, that's what we're going towards, and then planning as well. So yeah, I think state law passed last year, and we have to do it by October this year. And the state is providing the training and help with setting those sites up for each city and town. So that
Yeah.
way, because you're right, there's no excuse not to. If you should be pretty predictable. That just helps it become a much more predictable process for the property owners and for the public.
Yeah. Now, when you were talking about some of those bigger projects before,
Hmm.
infill, people doing, I guess, 3/1s or 4/1s or something like that.
Yep.
So actually, I guess good point. Two questions: do you guys have height limits, and like and FAR caps? And then also, what do you think the sort of barriers are? Like what's holding what's holding people up from building more? If assuming there's demand.
It's a good question. Um, I would say, all right. So your first question, yes, in the city I work in, most of it's probably going to be 3 stories. There might be a couple areas where we're allowed 4 stories. Providence is different, where you'll actually see skyscrapers. But on our main streets and our densest parts, the highest you would see is, yeah, three stories. Maybe you're allowed 4 stories for a density bonus for something. And then I would say the barriers are, so the state of Rhode Island, it depends on your municipality. I don't think the city where I work, I think we have a good reputation of, the rules are what they are. If you're consistent with zoning, if you are in, if your plans meet the requirements. We're gonna review it up against the regs, and it's gonna go to the
Mhm.
planning board, or it's gonna go to the zoning board, and if you meet those requirements, if you're entitled to it, it's going to happen. So in other communities, it might be less predictable who are anti-development, where you having a community who might be more rural, and then that's the difficulty. I have some communities in mind where if you go there, it's not going to be as predictable. You could
Yeah.
deny an
Mhm.
application. You can find a way to deny it, even though you might think someone is the legal right, and then say
Yeah.
appeal me, and then now they got to spend the time and money to go to superior court to try to, which is going to add a year, and the carrying costs only increase. So I don't know. I'm not a developer, so maybe someone else would be better at answering that. I think we do a
Yeah.
good job, but
Right.
I would say that's my perspective statewide. And the state, to try to answer that, is now trying to make things more uniform, and they're taking away certain local control, where they're like accessory dwelling units. Cities and towns are now not allowed to deny an accessory dwelling unit in Rhode Island if you have over 20,000 square feet, 20,000 square foot parcel. Now, where I am, how I mentioned, there's only our minimum square foot is 5,000. So if most of our city is 5,000 square foot parcels or 7,500 square foot parcels, someone's not gonna on the anti-development side, right? Someone's not gonna be able to come in and get an ADU approved by right based on that state law because they don't have the 20,000 square feet. But cities and towns are free to allow them. But the towns that were saying no, 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 we don't want these. The state is now preempting and saying you can't deny this if X, Y, Z.
Yeah. 20. Yeah. 20,000 square feet is wild. That's like almost a half acre.
Yeah.
Um,
Imagine having an acre and then your city or town saying you can't put a small ADU in your backyard that no one would even see
but
because a butter
but
wouldn't see it.
but you could do a lot split.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Well,
and-
we have some areas where your minimum lot size is 3-5 acres in some rural Rhode Island communities. But
yeah. I mean, we to be fair, we do have the same thing, and it's actually 10 acres. Um,
okay.
but also to be fair, it's very environmentally sensitive. Like it's where all our drinking water comes from.
Ooh, all right. So yeah.
So right, like you don't want development in that watershed. Um,
Hmm.
so uh,
Another big
yeah.
law that passed is, so we call it like prior recorded lots. So if we have lots that were platted, call it late 1800s, right? I could find a plat that was platted in 1890s, and all the lots are 3,200 square feet. So while someone may
All
have
right.
bought a
Yeah.
bunch of them, they in now we have a merger provision, which would mean that the city doesn't recognize those as individual 3,200 square foot lots. They get merged to conformance. So you'd have, like two 5,000 square foot lots instead of a bunch of 3,200s. So you couldn't actually come in and get a building permit for your 3,200 square foot lot because it doesn't meet zoning. So now the
Wait. How
state law, I'm
is that
sorry.
legal?
In Rhode Island, yeah, because there's a merger provision which the state must enable cities and towns to adopt a merger provision, which basically it cleans up a bunch of non-conforming parcels. Because say someone has a
Yeah.
2,000 square foot parcel, it's basically it merges if it doesn't meet zoning to so that the parcels combine to meet zoning. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. I guess my question would be so. I mean, you basically have a legal lot of record and like a chain of title, right? And this is getting
correct.
to the common law versus
Yep,
statutory law.
yep.
Um, so you've got that legal lot of record, and then you're telling someone that then there used to be a house there, but that they can't rebuild.
Oh no, no, and there was never a house there.
Oh, it was just
Yeah, I'm
platted
sorry.
and no one ever built on it.
Correct. Yes, yes, yes.
Oh,
Exactly.
okay.
It's the
Yep.
lots exist on paper, and you might have
Mhm.
had a bunch of them in the 1880s, and then now they've been merged when zoning was adopted, so
I
that lot
I
isn't
gotcha.
conforming.
Yep.
And then
That makes sense.
if you try go to a zoning board
Mhm.
and you say your minimum lot size in that neighborhood is 7,500 square feet, you only have 3,200. That doesn't that you're not going to get anywhere with the zoning board. He's going to say, okay, it depends on your community, but you're basically
Yeah.
less than half the lot size of every neighbor
Mhm.
because that's
Yeah.
how it's kind of been built out. So because zoning came after a lot of the neighborhoods were platted in New England, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So
it's
yeah.
you know,
But the new
I
state
mean,
law. that came in is to prevent cities and towns from doing that, to stop and saying, hey, I know this was platted, but this was platted in the 1880s, right? This was before zoning. This isn't how our city looks or is built
Mhm.
out. What the state law says, if you take that um, prior recorded lot, so it was a lot recorded before zoning, and you take a 200-foot radius, if 50% of the lots in that neighborhood are that same size that you have, or they're smaller, you have the legal right to build the home.
All right.
So a
Okay.
lot of neighborhoods, to your point, a lot of them did have houses on the 3,200, and then you have the 5,000, the 5,000, but a bunch of 3,200. So if that lot, look, basically the intent of the state law is the whole neighborhood is 3,200 square foot, or half the neighborhood is 3,200 square foot lots with homes built on them. You should be able to build on
Mhm.
that lot. The city can't say no. So that's a way the state is reacted to cities and towns denying housing. Um, so
Yeah.
your question of what is a
So,
barrier, the state's trying to see what the barriers are, and recently they've been
yeah.
adopting laws to try to stop cities and towns from stopping housing.
Yep. Yeah. No, I get it. And so that a 3,200 square foot, we're talking like 30 by 100, something like that. Uh,
um yeah, is 40
30
by
by
80
one,
make sense? Something
40
like,
by
I would
80. Yeah. Okay.
okay.
Yep. Yeah. I can see that. I think we've
You could have a
got
little shotgun ranch
really,
on it and it doesn't look
yeah.
ridiculous. Yeah.
With a really similar housing style in New Jersey. Um, uh, so where it's, I mean, they're typically 2 stories, but it's
Okay.
a narrow lot, and you probably only have like
Yeah.
maybe 5 feet between the homes, um,
Hmm.
and you got a small backyard, but
Yeah.
still detached,
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
in South Philly, my house, the lot was 16 by 55,
Whew.
right? Because it's a townhome,
That's so cool.
and
Yeah.
so the whole, I mean, most of the city, that's what it is. I mean, the lot sizes vary from 14 feet wide up to maybe 22, and then when you get out into West Philly, you might see more like 35, where
Okay.
they're semi-detached, like they share a wall, but then there's a side yard.
Okay.
But
That's
but
pretty cool.
in Philly, for the longest time, I don't know if this is still the case, but the new the new zoning code, and I'm trying to remember the exact problem, but a lot of people couldn't. There were a lot of vacant parcels throughout the city, especially in the late '90s, early 2000s, and a lot of them were abandoned. Nobody was paying the taxes on it. There were a ton of liens on it, but the city hadn't really done any work to sort of like put these put these lots back on the market, because no one could buy them. So they
Hmm.
had to go through this whole process with the sheriff's department taking them, and then um, having a sheriff sale. But anyway, as these lots started to come back online, people were buying them up, and it's for super cheap too, like $22,000, $24,000. But it was so crazy. I wish I had more money back then. Um,
Yeah. Right.
but but um, anyway, it was really difficult for a lot of people to build on those lots because without getting some kind of variance or waivers, because
Hmm.
um, they changed the different people call it different things, but like the lot occupation, like they were basically saying that you could only occupy like 80% of the parcel with the house.
Yep.
So I wouldn't call like the other 20% open space. It's because it's a patio
Yeah.
basically, if you're lucky. Um, and
We call it maximum building coverage, I think, and they're like, and then
yeah,
maximum
the
impervious, which
max,
kind of gets to the same effect of
yeah, max lot coverage is what we
max
call
lot
it.
coverage. Yeah,
Yeah.
lock. Yeah, thank you.
Um, but um, yeah, and impervious is a big deal here too, because of in Florida, not in Philly.
Yeah,
Although
yeah,
you would think Philly's had some pretty bad floods in recent history, um,
yeah.
because there's no place for the water to go. Um, but it was crazy. Like, somebody wants to build a single family home, and we're not even talking like a developer. We're talking about the person who owns the
Yep.
owner occupant can't build there without going through this year long process,
Hmm.
just to build one house. And you know, I see a lot of those barriers being lifted, which is kind of over the
Yes.
last 20 years, 15 years, which is why I was kind of asking, um, like cities say they want to see, redevelopment and reinvestment. And at the same time, we also have this housing crisis that is in no small part caused by those barriers to
Hmm.
development. So um, I think most of that stuff has been fixed in Philly for now.
Good.
But, here locally, we've had the same issue with the minimum lot size standards. And, there's so much that's just a quarter acre or a minimum lot size of like 8,000 square feet or 10,000
Hmm.
square feet. And you're just chewing up all this land. And then it's like, oh, whoops. But what do we do now? Oh, we're going to have to do infill because there's no land left. Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's slowing down now, but the growth here has been insane for almost 100 years. You're
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
like
Yeah. That's a good way
like
to put it.
double digits every double digit percentage growth every decade.
People
Um,
from Rhode Island moving down.
yeah, yeah.
Too
Actually,
cold in the winter.
it there's there's a there is a fair bit of that. People, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, a little bit of
And
New
the
England, not so,
snowbirds.
not yeah. Um, Actually, interesting point there. But what I was going to say is most of the people who are moving to the Orlando area now are coming from somewhere else in the state. A lot
Oh,
of
all
people,
right.
a lot of people are leaving Miami and South Florida in general because of how expensive it's gotten. Um,
Phew.
but then you also have people moving away from the coast because it's too
Because of
risky.
the risks. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so, but yeah, so we were just doing some calcs recently, and we are trying to figure out how much the population changes in the winter. And I don't have a clear answer yet. We're still working on it, but it's somewhere in
That's
the
a great
ballpark.
question. Yeah. I would love to know that
It's
answer.
it's somewhere in the ballpark of 7 to 8%. Is how much the population goes up in the wintertime. And I mean, you
Because
can
it's your
feel it.
regular population plus all the cold weather state people who come in for
Yeah, a lot of people,
yeah, for our winter. Yeah.
a lot of people who own houses here, but they don't they don't spend the whole year
Occupy them
here.
in August
Yeah,
and
and
July. They're not even there. Yeah.
right, and they disappear for a good part of the year, and then they come back in winter. But then also on top of that, every day we have about 330,000 people here who don't live here, who are just visiting.
That's
You know what I mean?
amazing.
So like,
You need
yeah,
space for them.
just
Yeah.
you need space for them. You need transportation capacity. You need sewer and water capacity. Um,
Mm.
and just like the the retail footprint that they take up because everybody's here to spend money. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's not why they're here, but that's what they're doing while they're here. Um, so yeah, it's huge, but it's also like we've kind of put it off in the corner of the county,
Mm-hmm.
so we don't have to deal with it. Like we can go visit when we want to, but it's not like part of our life. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's yeah, I guess just like the differences in the growth are sort of dictate what you are doing day to day.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your duties typically? I mean, I guess not duties isn't the right question. It's more like what does your day to day look like? What
Yeah.
exactly are you working on, and I guess why?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would say the planning department also in our city, we're like the primary grant writers for the city. So when we spend a lot of time applying for and then managing the grants. So my typical day, those are like the longer term projects that I work on. So I'll have some type of reporting involved with that during the day. But like a lot of it is anybody who comes in from the public, to your point, a lot of phone calls. We get a lot of people just come in obviously to the planning department with the same questions you mentioned on the phone. They'll come in person because maybe they were paying their water bill at city hall, or they were coming to city hall for something else, a marriage license, and they come upstairs to see what was what is being built in their neighborhood, whatever question they have for planning. And to your point, maybe it's a question for zoning or building, but yeah. So answering general questions from the public, just the the ideation of a vacant lot. So a lot of walk-in, just customer service is how I think of it. Just answering to the public. That sprinkled in throughout every single day is someone from the public coming in.
It blows my mind that people still walk in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
like.
I kind of like it because I think it's much more, it's easy. Some of these things are so complex, and to your point,
Mhm.
maybe they shouldn't have to be so complex. But trying to describe to
Yeah,
someone why they can't just build a deck in their backyard because it's going to increase their maximum impervious coverage, and actually their house already doesn't conform and is already encroaching into their side yard setback. Like it's just ridiculous to someone. So to be able to
yeah,
try to smooth that over in person
yeah,
helps me at least. I think
yeah.
I'm more effective communicating
That's a
in
good
person
point.
than on the phone. But
Yeah, yeah, I see that.
that, so yeah, working with the public every day is a huge part of my job in my daily workflow. And then also, I consider it project management when I'm working on a subdivision because it's going to be reviewed by our engineering department, zoning department. If it's complex, our legal department. If there's some easements involved, there's some title stuff, and then also depending. Engineering will usually work on this, but also we have our water department. Just depending on the complexities of the project, but and then our fire department, especially if it's a newer development. Then just working with those groups every single day, I would say, at least weekly, if not daily, in
Hmm.
the project management aspect of a subdivision or a site plan review or a concept that someone's interested in working on or developing. That's usually intertwined as part of the day of getting that reviewed by all them, getting feedback from them, and then communicating that to the 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 private sector, either the attorney who's managing the project for the applicant, or it could just be your regular homeowner who is doing it themselves. So that's usually part of the day, and then a different type of grant. Maybe we've applied to our state commerce department for funds to like improve our main streets. So then just if any reports required from the state, or if I need to work with any of the third parties that's actually going to be doing the work if it's not done by our municipal work. Another big part of my role is I work on our city's capital budget. That flows through our planning department through our city charter. So planning will reach out to all the different departments of the city for requests. We take in those requests. And then once the capital budget's adopted by our council each year, then managing those, I'd say more tracking them than managing them. Each department, if they're purchasing a new vehicle or if they're building something, if they're working on a larger capital budget, we would say is like a project more than 20 or a purchase more than $25,000 would be considered probably capital. And then so I work on that. That I would say is more of a monthly thing that I'll keep track of how those projects and purchases are happening throughout the year, to make
Hmm.
sure those are getting done and being closed out. Um, so yeah, so that's how I kind of picture a work day. Working on any land development projects that I'm working on any grants that I'm managing, and then your day's gonna get thrown for a loop with when someone comes in going down a rabbit hole on a certain project. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So the capital budget, that's interesting. Do you guys have a capital improvement element in your comp
yeah,
plan?
yeah. So we do a
Nice.
5-year capital
Yep.
improvement plan where each year, um, yeah, our directors request they submit a 5-year plan and of requests that they plan to purchase within the next or would like to. Obviously, the requests far outseed the money available, but it's good to
Mhm.
know what different departments need or are looking down the pipeline, like our public works, right? Say they need a new plow truck. So what is it going to be over the next 5 years? Or you need a new dump truck or a new, yeah, anything. I mean, or maybe the parks need new backstops. They know that they're kind of deteriorating. So maybe if it's not this year, we should be planning for that year two,
Mhm.
year three of the capital budget to get those done. So things like that. Every department's unique. Maybe the senior center needs a new bus or a new van. Again, that's not going to be in your typical operating budget. That would be a capital budget purchase. Um, so fire department, maybe a new fire truck. Again,
Yep.
like those are just one-offs every few years.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that's all done by planning, and then it's brought to our planning board for recommendation to our city council, which is kind of cool because it's kind of old school when you look at the traditional. I think of it more as the planning you probably do, Jim, in the sense of the standard like what like zoning enabling acts in like the 1930s, and then the city planning acts like the original ones would be planning for your municipal buildings in the capital of the city, whereas now because we do so much
Yeah.
infill, it's not as much of our planning commission isn't platting out the whole city.
Right.
That's how I envision how it used to be, right? But now
Yeah.
so it made sense that those purchases and new construction projects would flow through a planning department, planning board or planning commission. But our capital still does that. So
Yeah. So what kind of grants are you working on? Are these state or federal? And like what's the
yeah,
purpose?
yeah. So we're redoing a couple different parks in our city, and some of those grant
Right.
funds are from our department, our DEM. So they kind of
Hmm.
manage the state's open space or recreation grants. So it would be applying for those, and then once we get them working with our engineering and public works department, when we go out to bid for whoever's going to be designing it, and then whoever's going to be actually constructing it. So and then so yeah, so I would say a lot of our public space and park improvements, and then we also have some main street grants from our state's commerce department. So that would be again a lot of it. A lot of it is project management in the sense where
Right.
I'm not an engineer, I'm not a public works professional, so we work with our departments and department heads who are experts in these,
Hmm.
and kind of make the application and then do all the reporting on them, and then making and then working with our professionals who kind of actually get it done. Um, and then
Yeah.
so yeah, um, yeah, so things like that.
Yeah. I did it. When I was in Philly, I was working in transportation planning. That was my job, was basically
Yep,
grant
transportation grants.
management.
Yep. Yep. Oh
Yeah.
wow. Yeah.
So federal grants, and almost all of it was either last mile services like shuttle buses, that kind of thing, to train
Cool.
stations, um, and uh, and yeah, the sort of bike ped improvements around
Yep.
those stations and main streets. So like sidewalk gaps, ADA compliance,
Great.
that sort of thing. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
that
we have a couple of federal grants. One of them too with Department of Labor. We're doing adult education classes that are free to if you live or work in our city. You're able to take these courses, and that grant's fine from the federal government. That's still flowing, so that's good. And that's just
mhm.
yeah. So Department of Labor, EDA, Economic Development Agency. We have some grants with them to do some like a feasibility study on a certain building in our community to see how that can be a vacant one, to rework it to see what it could be used for. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, different federal, state. Yeah. Transportation
yeah.
usually flows through our state DOT, so
Hmm.
that's a big one. But that one I haven't been as particularly involved with myself. But it would be collaborating with DOT if the funds flow through them, to collaborate and work with them on the project.
Nice. Yeah. Um, yeah. It is such a huge part of the work. Like even if you're not working on it personally, and like for the most part, I'm not now, but I have in the past. Um, there's always someone in the department somewhere working on it. Um,
Yeah,
like, and a lot of that stuff, I don't know if it's the same for you, is tied to that sort of capital improvement element.
yeah, yeah.
Because like for us, um, the biggest part of that element is transportation and utilities.
Hmm.
Because here the utilities are mostly municipally owned, um,
Okay.
and so that's wrapped into the budget. Um,
Yeah, same.
and
Water and sewer are locally owned, and then we have Rhode Island Energy who does all our gas lines and stuff.
right,
But water
yeah,
sewer is local.
that's funny. We there. I don't have gas in the house, but we have it in the neighborhood. It comes from
Hmm.
Tampa. So
Wow.
so our like the electricity is Orlando Utilities Company, but the gas is the Tampa Electric Company.
Whew.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how or why that is. I guess because they have a like an LNG terminal in Tampa. Because there's no offshore drilling allowed in
Okay.
Florida.
What type of
So
energy do you use to like heat your home?
well, we don't. Um, but um,
Stupid
so
question. All right. Yeah.
so for no it's electric for air conditioning like today I've got the AC on. It's not
Wow.
like it's not.
But say it went into the 40s. You guys use electricity still?
Yeah, for heat. Yeah, we don't use the heat very often. I would say in January at night, because
Yeah.
it'll get down into the 30s here for sure.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like these houses aren't built for winter. Um, so it can get cold in the house. Um,
Wow.
but it doesn't last for very long. So like when we're using the heat, it's from like 5 a.m. till 8 a.m. or 9 a.m.
Okay.
and
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
and,
Yeah. I
and
get
it's
you.
only for a couple of days of winter.
Just a
And
little support system. It's not meant to like heat the whole house for an
yeah,
extended period of time. I get you.
right. Because once
To
the
keep
sun
pipes
comes
from
up,
freezing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, once the sun is up, it's warm. But funny enough, we have a fireplace
Cool.
that we do get to use a few times because when these houses were built, they did not have heat or air conditioning.
Wow.
Um, in the neighborhood that I live in, like central air didn't exist. People had window units, um,
Hmm.
and they would cool the bedrooms, but like the living space, it's basically was built to be open
Cool.
for most of the time, and there was an attic fan, but I could not imagine being here in the summer. So like May 15th till geez like September 15th, without air conditioning, no, I couldn't.
Yeah.
Um, I even like today, it's probably going to be like get up to 84, which I don't really consider hot, but it's humid enough that like I could open all the windows in the morning, but then I would just have to close them at night and turn the air
Okay.
conditioning on because you can't. It takes the house too long to cool off,
I get you.
especially the bedrooms. But yeah, yeah, and that's interesting too because going back to I guess the 50s or 60s, there's a big coal-fired electric plant that was built here, um,
Okay.
but it's been converted to gas, and I don't. I've looked at this recently, and I think that the energy profile is somewhere around 60-70% gas for
Okay.
OUC for Orlando Utilities, and then the rest is a mix of solar and then other stuff that we're uh, hydro that we buy from Georgia or South Carolina. Um,
Cool.
so um, yeah, you would you would think that solar would be a much bigger part of the energy profile here, and it
Yeah.
is. It's getting like it's growing. It's still growing by leaps and bounds, even though a lot of the subsidies are gone for it. But what's happening more now is you're seeing these huge solar farms popping up in more rural parts of the state. So like, and you could see this pretty clearly on Google Earth. So like
Cool.
if you're looking around Orlando, if you look on the southwest side of the metro,
Okay.
um, where I-4 and I-29 meet, you'll just see
Hmm.
all these square patterns popping up along the highway, and then also down in the far southeast, like way out in the boonies. There's a huge one that keeps getting bigger. It's probably about it's on US 192 going out towards Melbourne and the beach. It's probably like 2 miles long when you're driving
Wow.
past it, and then it goes probably a mile north of the highway too. It's massive, and
Huh.
like when you're looking at it on the map, what you're seeing is what was built probably like a couple months ago. Like they're still filling in the gaps. I have no idea what that's producing like megawatt wise in the summertime, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Makes sense in
Um,
Florida. So.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the only better place to do it is like Arizona,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Exactly.
someplace where it's never cloudy. I mean, I think uh, the biggest thing here is the humidity. Like all the moisture in the air cuts out the sort of effectiveness of Not completely,
Oh,
you know what I mean, but
okay.
it it's kind of like a screen, um, for the
Interesting.
the PV. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
um, wild. Oh, so last question here. Sorry about that tangent about solar.
No, no.
um,
That's good to know.
so I don't, as someone who works in planning, and I mean, I don't know if you would consider yourself in like the urbanist space or not, but do you think that there's anything that urbanism is like a blind spot, maybe?
Hmm.
Anything that that people are like people should know, but that they might be missing?
I like that question. I don't. Yeah, I got into planning how I described it earlier. So I wasn't a I don't think of myself as this urbanist in the sense that I grew up in a detached single family home, and so I don't know. A lot of the urbanism I see is like high density, no cars, and I get it, but I don't want to be a fraud. Hey, I own a car, I live in a single family home. I grew
Yeah.
up in one, um,
Yep.
so um, I guess the way I think about it is just like it's okay if people want to live in single family homes. I guess what the arguments I really enjoy reading about are the strong towns arguments on
Mhm.
the economics and fiscal side of it. To say,
Yeah.
all right, if someone wants to have plat out a single family detached neighborhood with large lot sizes, right? That's totally fine. I honestly think if a local government, it's the local zoning ordinance is adopted by the local legislative body by the community. So if that's the community they wanted, it's just when you ask kind of other people to subsidize that way of living. I think that's where it's like that's where I'm sympathetic to the argument of the density arguments. Say, hey, if we're
Yeah.
looking at a city, we should have some areas that allow for density because some of these other large lot single family subdivisions are actually a net loss, are a fiscal loss for the community. So
Right.
whereas before they've always been looked at as, oh, this is great, we subdivide it, now the property value is going to increase, we're going to increase tax revenue. But I love the strong towns fiscal analysis of it. That's the first time I encountered it, of saying, all right, well, let's look at the cost of the infrastructure of this, and actually after one or two life cycles the property tax actually doesn't even pay for it. So I didn't realize how much the denser areas are actually subsidizing the single family homes in the communities. So
Yeah.
um, that's kind of the space I'm in. So when you say like a yeah a blind spot, I guess I don't know. Yeah, I'm not like strong anti a bunch of things. I just
Hmm.
try to
Yeah.
contextualize it with okay, some of it might be a fiscal net loss, some of it is actually a fiscal net positive. So let's make sure that's included in the conversation and attacking it from that angle. And then that's kind of the my current framework of things. But I get it where
Yeah.
some people want the state to control and override the cities and towns because they're thinking, well, if cities and towns are consistently rejecting these types of developments, then it's never going to happen unless we make them do it. And then
Right.
so I get that argument, but I still, being from Rhode Island, because it is so many cities and towns and local control, I guess I
Mhm.
do enjoy the local control. When you have a zoning ordinance, it's nice for that to be local instead of the state house seems further than your city hall. So I'd rather be able to go to my city hall to when it comes to a building permit or a zoning ordinance or
Yeah.
property
Yeah.
rights. It's nice to be able to say, hey, locally. I don't know. You feel like you have more control
It
over it.
it's nice to see who you're working with, and
Yeah,
maybe even to know them on a sort of professional level.
exactly.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want the federal
Yeah.
government zoning my parcel. Imagine trying to get a zone change from Congress. Like, forget about it. So it's nice to know that, hey, you go down, we know the avenue. Yeah, for better or for worse, it's so localized, but which may result in less development and people being frustrated by that.
Yeah.
But
But
I,
yeah, you
yeah, I don't know. That's my
I
opinion.
don't. No, yeah, 100%. I'm in the same place, I think.
Mhm.
We're using Urban 3 now for that
Cool.
fiscal
Nice.
sustainability analysis. So I don't know yet how much that's going to be work its way into what we do.
Hmm.
But it's more exploratory right now, and like identifying the neighborhoods that are just sucking in the tax revenue and which
Yeah.
ones are sending it out. And it's pretty, I mean, it is pretty clear to see. It's less about residential and more about commercial, to be fair.
Hmm.
But when you combine those things, you wind up with like the jackpot. It's just
Yep.
my thing is I don't know how often you can combine those things, right? Because
Hmm.
you're the amount of retail you're going to be able to have relative to residential is pretty limited.
Hmm.
And like we're seeing that now, even like the mixed use plans that I worked on, where that were done 15 or 20 years ago, where they
Hmm.
planned for a ton of retail. The
Yep.
demand for that has shrunk so much that now at this point we need twice as many residential units to support the same amount of retail.
Interesting. Yeah, I
So
see the same thing as far as not on that deep of level, but of analysis, but just in the sense of we'll rezone things from mixed use, and then we'll just see apartments. They'll say,
yep,
yeah, they'll just they don't even build the first floor commercial. They just say,
yep,
no, we're just going to do the residential unit. So it's like, gee, well, you can do the you're allowed all these
right.
uses mixed use, but they don't even do it.
Yeah, because there's not money in it for them. Like there's no demand for the retail. It's a struggle for us too,
That's what we
and
hear.
and
Yeah.
all and also because of the financing. When you
Yep.
mix
Yep.
commercial and residential, the financing is chaotic. And
Yeah.
I don't yeah I don't like it, but I get it. You know what I mean? It is the way it is.
Mhm.
So I don't know, but
So.
okay. It's Saturday. I appreciate your time, and I actually have to go to a work event in like an hour. So
Oh wow.
I got to get ready and get out of here. Yeah, it's a little like we trade our time. Sometimes we have to work on weekends, so I take Friday afternoon off or something like that.
And
But
then do it. So yeah.
part of the job. Got to do it.
Yeah. Good for you. Good for you. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it. This was a good discussion.